I didn't expect my nephew's honesty to break my silence that night. He knocked on my door with rain still clinging to his jacket, and what he told me, plain, steady, without dramatics, opened a part of me I hadn't touched in years. It's a memory that still warms and unsettles me in equal measure. Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts or story in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. Now, before I begin, tell me, where are you watching from? I'd love to know which cities and towns are joining me for this memory that stayed with me for years. The house had been quiet in that after-dinner way. Dishes drying in the rack, the air sweet with a trace of dish soap and the lemon peel I'd tossed into the trash. A lamp pooled soft gold over the living room rug, and the grandfather clock ticked with that patient certainty that makes you aware of your own breathing. Outside, the rain had thinned to a drizzle, whispering along the gutters like a conversation you're not meant to hear. When I opened the door, Daniel stood there with his backpack slung over one shoulder, hair damp, eyes too serious for a young man his age. He's taller than I remember each time. Every visit stretches him a little more toward his own life. He said my name the way people say it when they've been thinking about saying it for a while. Aunt Ruth? Come in, I said, stepping aside. You'll catch a chill out there. He wiped his feet carefully on the mat, because he always does, even when the weather is kind. Inside, the warmth reached for him. I took his jacket, draped it over the chair near the heater, and watched a small fog lift from the damp fabric. He hovered by the doorway as if he might need a swift exit, then followed me into the kitchen where the kettle was still warm. Tea? I asked. Or cocoa, if the evening calls for it. Cocoa, he said, and the way he said it told me it had been a long day. I stirred the powder into the milk until it turned that deep brown that smells like comfort. He wrapped his hands around the mug and blew across the surface, the steam touching his cheeks. He didn't drink right away. Instead, he studied the table, the same old oak that has collected years of elbows and newspapers and birthday candles. I sat across from him and waited, because I've learned not to pull out a thread until it's ready to loosen. I didn't know where else to go, he said at last. The clock ticked once, twice. I kept my voice even. I'm glad you came here. He nodded, but his mouth pressed into a line. I've been feeling wrong-sized for the rooms I'm in. At home, at school, like I'm either too much or not enough, and I can't figure out which one people want from me. There it was, simple, precise, honest. Not anger, not a plea, just truth laid gently on the table between us. It startled something in me, like seeing a clear reflection after months of fogged glass. I recognized that feeling too well. Wrong-sized. Years ago, after the quiet ended between my ex-husband and me for good, I moved through my days like a person holding a heavy bowl, careful not to spill. People told me I was strong. What they meant was I didn't make a mess where others might step in it. I poured a little more hot milk into his cup. Rooms can be tricky, I said. They're built for averages, and not one of us is average. He huffed a small laugh, then shook his head. I don't want to be dramatic. It's just, Dad keeps telling me to push harder, pick something, be the best. And my friends keep acting like life is a list to check off. I feel like I'm standing in a hallway with all the doors open, and they're all asking me to choose now, and I can't even hear myself think. The hallway. I saw it as he spoke, bright doors, too many voices. I thought of the hallway in my own house, the one lined with pictures. My parents on their porch, my sister on a windy beach, Daniel at 5 holding a paper kite that wouldn't fly but looked beautiful trying. The frames catch sunlight in the afternoons, and the glass humbles the moments, keeps them in place. Do you know, I said, that once I didn't speak for a month? He looked up, startled. You mean, like he couldn't. I mean, I wouldn't. Not really silence. I did the necessary words. Good morning. How are you? Paper or plastic. But not the words that tell people where you are on a map they can't see. I got good at nodding. I got good at the weather. He held the mug with both hands now, attentive the way a child leans toward a campfire story. Why? Because I thought the rooms wanted neat answers, and the only things I had were questions. Because I didn't want to be wrong-sized in public. Because I was tired. I paused. The memory slid in like a tide, gentle but insistent. And because I didn't trust honesty to land softly. I imagined it would shatter on the floor and cut someone, maybe me. Daniel set the mug down, very carefully, as if proving to me that some things can return to the table unbroken. Did it help? The not talking. For a while. One of those terrible whiles that feel like safety because nothing moves. But then nothing moves. He glanced toward the living room and the soft square of lamplight on the rug. What changed? I smiled at a picture only I could see. Your mother, I said. She knocked on my door one evening, maybe the way you did tonight. She said, I'm worried about you, Ruth. I miss your words. I told her I was fine. She told me fine is almost never the right word for anything that matters. Then she took my hand and told me something honest about her own life, something tender and complicated that I won't retell because it belongs to her. And suddenly I remembered that honesty is a bridge, not a weapon. I crossed back over. He listened without blinking, as if the space between each sentence mattered as much as the sentence itself. So you started talking again. Not all at once, I said. At first it was small things, like noticing the sky had a color I couldn't name. Then the bigger things. I learned the room didn't collapse when I brought my whole self into it. It rearranged, that's all. The rain stuttered and settled. In the quiet I heard him breathe, slow and deliberate, the way a person does when they're setting something down. He looked older and younger at once, the way family can be all at once a mirror and a memory. Aunt Ruth, he said, and his voice had that steadiness again. I'm scared that if I'm honest, really honest, people will think I'm weak, or they'll try to fix me, or they'll change how they look at me. I don't want to be a project. I leaned back, felt the chair's wood press against my shoulder blades, felt the relief of telling a truth without dressing it up. People who love you don't turn you into a project, I said. They build a porch light and leave it on. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, the kind a person gives when they hear the thing they were hoping to hear, but didn't dare ask for. The porch light above my back door flickered and steadied, a coincidence so kind it felt like a sign. I could have stopped there, kept the evening folded neatly, but his honesty had opened a door inside me, and I felt the weight of my own unspoken thing, the one I had tucked behind polite conversation and seasonal decorations. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even secret, exactly. It was simply the truth I'd learned to walk around, that I had been lonely, not only because I lived alone, but because I had become excellent at hiding in plain sight. Can I be honest back? I asked. He looked surprised. I thought you already were. A different kind, I said, and opened my hands as if offering him something I wasn't yet sure how to name. When I say I'm fine, sometimes I mean I made it through the day and no one saw me. Sometimes I spend an entire Saturday talking only to the radio and the checkout clerk. Some evenings I set 2 places at the table without thinking, then put 1 plate back. His eyes softened. He didn't rush to fill the space with comfort. He let it be. That, too, is a kind of love. Witness without rescue. The kettle clicked as the remaining heat settled. Somewhere in the house, the heater breathed on and off like a gentle animal. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "Should have known." "No," I said, shaking my head. "We can't know what isn't offered. That's the bargain of silence. It keeps spills off the floor, but it also keeps someone from handing you a towel." He smiled at that, and the smile was Daniel at 6 again, missing a front tooth, proud of a lopsided snowman. "So what do we do?" "Maybe," I said, "we practice. You tell the truth, even if your voice shakes." "I tell the truth, even if it makes the room rearrange. We make a little space each week that doesn't require either of us to be large or small, just the right size for being ourselves." He sat with this, tested its edges like a new pair of shoes. "Sundays," he said, "I could come by after practice. We could talk, or not talk, but not pretend." "Not pretend," I repeated, and the words landed like a key in a lock. He finished his cocoa then, a small satisfied sound in his throat, as if warmth had found all the cold corners. He stood and wandered into the living room, tracing his finger along the frames on the hallway wall. He paused at the picture of him and his mother on the fairgrounds, both of them caught mid-laugh by some wind-tossed joy. When he came back, he looked lighter, not fixed, not solved, just less alone in the work. "Do you mind if I stay a while?" he asked. "I don't want to go home yet. I just want—" He gestured vaguely toward the room, the clock, the lamp. "This." I spread the Afghan across the couch and pressed the remote until the television settled on a nature documentary, the kind where the narrator's voice is slow and kindly, and the ocean keeps arriving in waves. He lay back, feet dangling off the armrest the way he did when he was little and long, and I tucked the blanket around his ankles because there are habits the world never needs to outgrow. As the program murmured on, a calm came over the room that wasn't the old quiet, the tight-lipped kind. This was the quiet that follows a door opening when the air shifts and you feel the room's true size. Daniel's breathing evened. I sat in my chair with a book open but unread, listening to the rain's last small argument with the roof. Before sleep took him, he turned his head and said, not quite awake, "Thanks for telling the truth, Aunt Ruth." It was such a simple sentence, and it sounded like a blessing. I could feel my old month of silence, the one I carried like a medal and a bruise, loosen its grip. His honesty had reached back through my years and pulled me forward by the hand. He had knocked on my door and, without knowing it, opened one in me. The lamp hummed. The clock kept our time. I went to the kitchen and set 2 clean mugs by the kettle for morning. It felt right to prepare for 2. When I returned, he was asleep, the kind of deep, unguarded sleep that belongs to people who have finally put something down. I turned the porch light on and left it there, a small statement against the dark, a promise that if he needed to knock again, next Sunday or any night at all, there would be warm cocoa and a room that could hold the size of who we both truly were. The next morning felt different, lighter somehow. The rain had cleared, leaving the air crisp and cool, and sunlight spilled gently across the kitchen table. I moved quietly as I set out breakfast, half expecting Daniel to still be asleep on the couch. But before I could call him, I heard his footsteps behind me. "Morning, Aunt Ruth," he said, his voice still heavy with sleep, but carrying a softness I hadn't heard in a long time. "Morning," I replied, smiling as I slid a plate toward him. "Sit, eat." He sat down and dug into the toast, not saying much at first. But there was no tension in the silence. It was a comfortable kind, like we'd both agreed that words could come when they were ready. I sipped my coffee and just watched him. How his shoulders didn't seem as hunched, how his eyes looked less clouded. After a while, he set down his fork and glanced at me. "I don't think I've ever told you this," he said quietly, "but it feels easier here, like I don't have to act a certain way." I nodded, keeping my voice steady. "That's what this house is for. No performances. Just you, exactly as you are." His lips curved into a small smile, the kind that comes from relief more than amusement. I needed that, more than I realized. We sat there for a while, sunlight stretching longer across the floor, the smell of coffee and toast wrapping around us like a blanket. He didn't share much more, and I didn't push. But I could feel it, the beginning of something healing between us. His honesty had opened the door, and now, slowly, we were learning how to walk through it together. That morning reminded me that sometimes breaking silence isn't about spilling everything at once. Sometimes it's just about sitting across the table, being seen, and knowing you don't have to carry the weight alone anymore. Later that afternoon, the house had settled into its familiar quiet. I was folding laundry in the living room when Daniel wandered in, his hands tucked into his pockets. He didn't say anything at first, just sat down on the edge of the couch and stared at the pile of folded towels like they might have the answers he was looking for. "Aunt Ruth," he said finally, his voice low, "can I ask you something?" I set the towel aside and turned toward him. "Of course. You can ask me anything." He hesitated, his eyes fixed on the floor. "Do you ever feel like you're not enough? Like no matter what you do, it won't be what people want from you?" The question sank into me like a stone dropped in still water. I knew exactly what he meant. I nodded slowly. Yes, more times than I can count. I used to think being enough meant meeting everyone else's expectations. It took me a long time to learn that being enough simply means being honest about who you are. He lifted his eyes to mine then, and I saw the weight behind them. That's how I feel all the time. Like I'm pretending just to keep everyone happy. With Dad, with my friends, even at school. But it's exhausting, Aunt Ruth. I don't know how much longer I can keep it up. I felt a knot tighten in my chest. "Daniel, listen to me. You don't have to keep pretending. The people who truly care about you don't need you to be perfect or polished. They need you to be real. You're not failing by being yourself. You're surviving." His eyes shimmered, and for a moment I thought he might cry. But instead he let out a shaky laugh. It feels so strange saying this out loud, like I've been carrying a backpack full of bricks, and I finally set it down. I reached for his hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. That's what honesty does. It lightens the load. You don't have to carry everything by yourself anymore. For the first time since he'd arrived, he leaned back into the couch, his shoulders easing just a little. The room felt different, less heavy, more open. He didn't say much more, but he didn't need to. His silence no longer felt like a wall between us. It felt like rest. As I picked up the next towel, I realized something. His honesty hadn't just lifted his burden. It had broken through mine, too. The silence I'd carried for years, the quiet that came from keeping too much inside, was no longer safe. And maybe that was the point. Maybe we both needed to learn that silence protects nothing when love is waiting on the other side. That evening, after the sun slipped low and the sky turned a deep indigo, Daniel and I sat on the porch again. The crickets filled the air with their steady song, and the porch light cast a warm circle around us. He leaned against the railing, his backpack already by the door, ready for when he'd leave in the morning. But neither of us was in a rush. He broke the silence first. "Aunt Ruth," he said quietly, "thank you for listening, for not judging me. I didn't realize how much I needed to let this out until I did. And now that I have, I feel like I can finally breathe." I took a slow breath myself, letting his words sink in. You gave me a gift too, Daniel. Your honesty reminded me how important it is to speak the truth instead of burying it. I've been quiet for too long about the things I've carried, and hearing you tonight, it showed me that silence only builds walls we don't need. He turned to me, his face softened by the porch light. So what now? Do we just go back to normal? I shook my head gently. No, we go forward. We promise not to hide behind silence anymore. You and I, we make space for honesty even when it's uncomfortable. That's how we grow. That's how we stay close. He nodded slowly, considering my words. Then he smiled, small but certain. I like that. No more hiding. We sat for a long while after that, sipping our tea, watching the stars appear one by one. There wasn't much left to say, and we didn't need to fill the quiet. It was no longer the heavy kind of silence that keeps people apart. It was the gentle kind, the kind that comes when two people know they've finally been heard. When he finally stood to go inside, he paused and looked at me. You know, he said, I was scared my honesty would push you away, but instead it brought us closer. I'll never forget that. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I held his gaze steady. Neither will I, and whenever you need it, this porch light will be on for you. He nodded, and for a moment I saw the boy he used to be and the man he was becoming, all in the same glance. And I realized that his honesty had done more than break my silence. It had built a bridge between us, one strong enough to carry us through whatever storms lay ahead. As the night deepened and the house settled around us, I whispered a silent promise to myself. Never again would I let silence keep me from connection. Because sometimes all it takes is one unexpected moment of truth to remind us that love is not found in perfect answers. It's found in the courage to be real with each other. And that night, sitting beside my nephew under the glow of the porch light, I knew we had both chosen courage.